The archbishop who challenged a president, the priest at the center of Zambia's political firestorm. Today, we go deep inside the political storm gripping Zambia, and at the center of it all is one man, Archbishop Alick Banda. Loved by many, criticized by others, and feared by those who believe he holds more influence than most politicians. How did a Catholic priest become one of the most talked about figures in Zambian politics? Why are his statements shaking the nation? And what does this mean for Zambia heading into 2026? Stay with us, what you're about to hear might change how you see the entire debate. Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of InspirAfrica Official. I'm Nakash. Well, it's been quite a week here, and I hope you're all doing well wherever you are in the world. Today, we're diving into a story that has absolutely set Zambia ablaze, a story that sits at the dangerous intersection of faith, power, and political fury. The cross versus the crown, when a man of God becomes an enemy of the state. Imagine this, a cathedral, its pews filled with the faithful, the air thick with incense and prayer. At the pulpit stands not just any priest, but an archbishop, a shepherd of souls, a voice that speaks for the voiceless. But on this particular Sunday, his sermon doesn't bring comfort to everyone listening. Because somewhere in those hallowed halls, or perhaps watching from a distance, the words being spoken are not received as holy truth, but as political sedition. What happens when a religious leader dares to speak truth to power? What happens when the pulpit becomes a platform for dissent, and prayers transform into political critique? When does pastoral concern cross the line into what a government might call dangerous agitation? Picture the scene, an archbishop, draped in his sacred vestments, uttering words that would soon echo far beyond the cathedral walls, words that would reach the highest office in the land and trigger a firestorm of accusations, investigations, and threats. Was this a man of God fulfilling his prophetic duty to speak for justice? Or had the line between church and state been dangerously, perhaps even criminally, violated? And here's the question that has gripped an entire nation: when the government of Zambia decides that a priest has gone too far, when they invoke laws designed to protect the state against those who might incite chaos, what does that say about the state of democracy itself? Who gets to decide where religious freedom ends and political subversion begins? Is this archbishop a prophet crying out in the wilderness, or has he become, in the eyes of his government, a threat that must be silenced? And what happens next when neither side is willing to back down, whether you support him, criticize him, or are still forming an opinion? This deep dive gives you the full picture. Factual foundation. The revelation came to light in late 2024, when Archbishop Alick Banda of the Catholic Archdiocese of Lusaka found himself at the center of an unprecedented political maelstrom in Zambia. This is Zambia, a nation in southern Africa with a proud democratic tradition, a country that has seen peaceful transitions of power and prides itself on its constitutional governance. But something shifted in the relationship between the church and state, and Archbishop Banda became the lightning rod for that tension. The archbishop's troubles began with what many clergy do every Sunday: he delivered a sermon. But this wasn't just any homily about love and redemption. According to reports that emerged in November 2024, Archbishop Banda had used his platform to deliver pointed criticism of President Hakainde Hichilema's administration, addressing issues of governance, economic hardship, and what he perceived as growing authoritarianism. The Catholic Church in Zambia has long been a moral voice in the nation's public square. The Zambian Episcopal Conference, representing the country's Catholic bishops, has historically issued pastoral letters on matters of national importance, from elections to economic policy, from human rights to corruption. Archbishop Banda, as a senior prelate in Lusaka, the nation's capital, stood in a position of significant moral authority. But on this occasion, the response from the government was swift and severe. Rather than engaging with the substance of the archbishop's concerns, the authorities made a dramatic move. They announced they were considering charges against him under Zambia's sedition laws. The allegation? That the archbishop's statements could incite violence or hatred against the government, a criminal offense that carries serious penalties. By late November 2024, the situation had escalated dramatically. Police officials confirmed they were investigating the archbishop for possible sedition. The ruling United Party for National Development, UPND, issued statements defending their decision, arguing that no one, not even religious leaders, should be above the law when it comes to statements that might destabilize the nation. And then came the international dimension. The Vatican, through diplomatic channels, began monitoring the situation closely. The Southern African Catholic Bishops' Conference issued statements of concern. Civil society organizations, opposition parties, and ordinary Zambians took to social media to debate a fundamental question: had Zambia's government crossed a red line by targeting a religious leader for his words from the pulpit? The timeline was stark: sermon delivered. Government offended. Investigation launched. Archbishop potentially facing criminal charges. A nation divided. Direct evidence. While we work to obtain the complete transcript of Archbishop Banda's controversial sermon, statements from key figures reveal the depth of this confrontation. Government spokesperson Cornelius Mwitwa addressed the media, defending the administration's position: the government of the Republic of Zambia respects the church and values religious freedom. However, we will not, allow anyone to abuse that freedom to incite violence or to spread falsehoods that could lead to public disorder. Archbishop Banda, like any citizen, must understand that freedom of expression comes with responsibilities. When pressed by journalists about whether investigating a religious leader might appear to be religious persecution, Mwitwa continued, "This is not about persecuting the church. It's about the rule of law." If the Archbishop has evidence of wrongdoing by this government, there are proper channels: the Anti-Corruption Commission, the courts, parliamentary committees. What we cannot accept is the deliberate distortion of facts to paint this government in a negative light when we are working day and night for the Zambian people. The ruling party's Secretary General, Batuka Menda, was even more direct in a radio interview: "Let me be clear, we are not targeting the Catholic Church. We have many Catholics in our party, including in senior positions." But Archbishop Banda has chosen to step into the political arena with very serious allegations. He cannot hide behind his collar when he makes claims that are simply not true. He said our government is authoritarian? Show us where. He said we are persecuting people? Where is the evidence? From the opposition benches, a different narrative emerged. Emmanuel Mwamba, a prominent opposition figure and former diplomat, told journalists, "This is a dark day for Zambia. We are witnessing the intimidation of religious leaders who dare to speak truth to power." Archbishop Banda did what every religious leader should do: he spoke about the suffering of ordinary Zambians. The high cost of living, the reports of selective application of the law, the shrinking democratic space. And what does this government do? They threaten him with sedition charges. This is the behavior of a dictatorship, not a democracy. The Law Association of Zambia issued a carefully worded statement: "While we recognize that no person is above the law, we urge caution in the application of sedition laws, particularly against individuals exercising their constitutionally protected right to freedom of expression and freedom of religion. The threshold for sedition must be extremely high and must involve clear incitement to violence or lawlessness." From the Catholic Church itself came measured but firm responses. Father Alex Mayabi, speaking on behalf of the Zambian Episcopal Conference, stated, "The Church will continue to speak on matters of social justice, good governance, and the welfare of all Zambians. This is not politics, this is our pastoral mission." Archbishop Banda was exercising his prophetic duty. We call upon the government to engage in dialogue rather than confrontation. And international observers weighed in. Dennis Hurley, a human rights advocate, noted in a statement, "When governments begin investigating religious leaders for sermons, we must ask ourselves what kind of precedent this sets." Today it's Archbishop Banda. Tomorrow, will it be imams, pastors, or any other religious leader who dares to question government policy? Perhaps most tellingly, ordinary Zambians took to social media and call-in radio programs with divided reactions. One caller to a popular Lusaka radio station said, "The Archbishop is right to speak up. We are suffering. Prices are too high, there are no jobs, and when we complain, they call us enemies of progress." Another countered, "The Archbishop should pray for our leaders, not attack them publicly. This is not the role of the Church." Deeper analysis. This confrontation raises profound questions about the nature of democracy, religious freedom, and the role of moral institutions in political life, not just in Zambia, but across the African continent and indeed the world. At its core, this crisis represents a collision between two legitimate but competing principles. On one hand, governments have a responsibility to maintain public order and to protect themselves against genuine incitement to violence or chaos. Zambia, like many nations, has sedition laws designed to prevent dangerous speech that could lead to unrest or even civil conflict. On the other hand, religious institutions have historically played a crucial role as moral voices, particularly in societies where other institutions may be weak, captured, or compromised. The Catholic Church in Zambia, along with other denominations, has long been seen as a trusted arbiter on issues of justice, corruption, and governance. When churches issue pastoral letters criticizing government policy, they aren't engaging in partisan politics, they're fulfilling what they see as a sacred duty to speak for those who have no voice. Legal experts point out that sedition is an extremely serious charge, and one that must meet a very high bar in any democratic society. It's not enough for speech to be critical, uncomfortable, or even harsh. For sedition to apply, there must typically be a clear and imminent incitement to violence or lawlessness. Did Archbishop Banda's sermon meet this threshold? Many legal analysts express skepticism. Professor Michelo Hansungul, a prominent human rights lawyer, has argued in similar cases that sedition laws inherited from colonial-era legislation are often used as tools of political repression rather than legitimate instruments of public safety. The question we must ask, he noted in a recent commentary, is whether these laws are being applied to protect the state from genuine threats, or to protect the government from legitimate criticism. The political dimensions are equally complex. President Hichilema's government came to power in 2021 on a wave of hope and promises of democratic renewal after years under the previous administration. His supporters argue that the government has faced unfair and often false criticism from opposition elements, including some within the church hierarchy, who they claim have political motivations. But critics see a worrying pattern. In recent months, opposition leaders have faced arrests, media outlets have been threatened with closure for critical coverage, and now a senior religious figure faces investigation. Is this the behavior of a government defending itself against genuine threats, or a government growing increasingly intolerant of dissent? The regional implications are significant. Southern Africa has a mixed record on democratic governance. Some countries, like Botswana and Namibia, have maintained relatively strong democratic institutions. Others have seen democratic backsliding, with Zimbabwe being the most prominent example. Where Zambia goes matters not just for its 19 million citizens, but for the broader democratic project in the region. And then there's the question of precedent. If Archbishop Banda is ultimately charged and convicted, what message does that send to other religious leaders? Will priests, pastors, imams, and rabbis think twice before addressing issues of governance and justice from their pulpits? And if religious institutions fall silent on matters of public concern, who will speak for ordinary citizens when they feel wronged by their government? Some analysts suggest this confrontation could have been avoided entirely through dialogue. Why didn't government officials sit down with Archbishop Banda to discuss his concerns rather than immediately reaching for the law? Why didn't the Archbishop perhaps engage privately with government before making public criticisms? Both sides, some argue, could have chosen a path of engagement over confrontation. Yet others contend that sometimes confrontation is necessary, that prophetic voices must be willing to stand alone, even at great personal cost, when they believe justice demands it. The history of moral leadership is filled with figures who faced persecution for speaking uncomfortable truths: Martin Luther King Jr. in America, Desmond Tutu in South Africa, Oscar Romero in El Salvador. Is Archbishop Banda walking in this tradition? Or is the comparison overwrought? What remains unresolved is the ultimate question of balance. How does a democracy protect both the stability and order that allows society to function, while also protecting the freedom of speech and religious expression that makes democracy meaningful? There are no easy answers, and Zambia's struggle with these questions is playing out in real time, with real consequences for real people. Well, viewers, that's where we stand in this extraordinary confrontation between the Archbishop and the President in Zambia. A story that continues to unfold, with implications that reach far beyond one sermon, one investigation, one nation. I want to thank you for watching today and for staying engaged with these critical stories from across our continent. These are not just political stories, they're stories about the kind of societies we want to build, the values we want to uphold, and the courage it takes to stand for what you believe is right, even when powerful forces push back. What do you think? Was Archbishop Banda right to speak out as he did, or should religious leaders avoid such direct political commentary? Do you believe the government's investigation is a legitimate application of the law, or does it represent a dangerous attack on freedom of expression? I genuinely want to hear your perspectives, so please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a respectful but honest conversation about these important issues. We'll continue following this story as it develops, and we'll be back tomorrow with more news, more analysis, and more of the stories that matter across Africa and beyond. Until then, take care of yourselves, stay informed, and never stop asking the important questions. I'm Nakash, and this has been InspirAfrica Official. See you tomorrow.